The night my brother's fiancé twirled around in the kitchen of my parents' bakery, the one I had been keeping alive for 4 years, and said, "I love our new place," I didn't cry. I didn't say a word. I just stood there holding a cardboard box of my own baking supplies, the ones I brought over that morning to help with the weekend rush, and I thought, so this is how it ends. I should back up. My name is Diane. I'm 31 years old. I have a master's degree in accounting, a small apartment in Columbus that I am very proud of, and a leather-bound notebook where I tracked every single dollar I ever gave my family. That notebook is sitting on my kitchen counter right now, and the last number on the last page is $187,400. That is not a typo. My parents immigrated from South Korea in the early 90s and built Sunrise Sweets from nothing, a small Korean-American bakery in a strip mall in Westerville, Ohio, between a nail salon and a UPS store. Growing up, that place smelled like red bean paste and vanilla extract and my father's cigarettes he thought no one knew about. I spent my childhood weekends behind that counter. I knew every regular by name, Mr. Peterson who always got the custard bun on Saturdays, the Nguyen family who ordered a whole sheet cake every Lunar New Year. I love that bakery the way you love the place that made you. My brother, 3 years younger, always the one who made my parents laugh harder, stay up later, worry less, never really took to it the way I did. He was charming and scattered, and perpetually between things, between jobs, between girlfriends, between plans. My parents called it finding himself. I called it Tuesday. I was 25 when my father had his first heart attack. Minor, the doctor said. But nothing feels minor when you're standing in a hospital hallway in Westerville at 2 in the morning eating vending machine crackers trying not to fall apart. My mother looked 10 years older overnight. My father came home with a stack of prescriptions and strict orders to reduce stress. The bakery, which had always run on the sheer force of my parents' energy, suddenly had no one to run it. My brother was living in Austin at the time. He said he was getting into real estate. He came home for a week, helped a little, then drove back to Texas with his car full of my mother's home-cooked food, and said he'd be back soon. He was not back soon. I was the one who stayed. I took a hybrid work arrangement with my firm so I could spend 3 days a week at the bakery. I managed the books, renegotiated the lease, hired 2 part-time staff, updated the POS system, started an Instagram account that actually got them some traction with younger customers. On top of my full-time job, on top of rent, on top of existing as a person. My parents never asked me directly to do any of this, but when you are the kind of daughter I was, the kind who answers the phone on the first ring, who notices when the refrigeration unit is making a new sound, who drives 40 minutes at 6 in the morning because someone called in sick, you don't get asked, you just get expected. The money started gradually. First, it was covering the payroll gap 1 month when a big catering order fell through. Then it was the equipment repair when the commercial oven died in the middle of holiday season. Then it was the business insurance renewal my father had let lapse without telling anyone. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself each time was the last time. I had a spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, amount. Column C, what it was for. I kept it not out of resentment, but out of habit. I'm an accountant. I track things. I was not tracking it to hold it over anyone. I just needed to know where my money was going. My boyfriend Derek watched all of this unfold from the passenger seat of my life, with the patience of a man who loved me and the concern of a man who was watching me drown in slow motion. He never told me to stop. He asked questions gently like, "Do they know how much you've put in so far? And have you talked to them about a plan?" And I always said yes or soon or I'll bring it up when things settle down. Things did not settle down. Year 2, the bakery stabilized. Year 3, it was actually doing well, better than it had in a decade, genuinely. My Instagram strategy worked. A local food blogger featured them. They started getting wedding cake inquiries. I negotiated a contract with a corporate office park for weekly pastry deliveries. I did all of that. I was proud. I thought, okay, maybe this is turning around. Maybe we're getting somewhere. My brother came home that Christmas with a woman named Felicity. She was warm and pretty and laughed at all of my father's jokes, which, fair enough, my father is genuinely funny. They announced their engagement at the dinner table on Christmas Eve. My mother burst into tears of joy. My father opened the good wine. Everyone toasted. I smiled and raised my glass and meant it actually. I liked Felicity. She seemed solid. What I did not know, sitting at that table raising that glass, was that my parents had already decided what they were giving my brother as a wedding gift. I found out in March. Not from my parents, from my brother. He called me on a Tuesday evening, casual as anything, to ask if I could move my stuff out of the back office before the end of the month because he and Felicity were going to start using it as their home base while they got the business transition sorted. I thought I had misheard him. I asked him to repeat himself. He said patiently, like he was explaining something to someone slow, "Mom and Dad are signing the bakery over to us as a wedding gift. We're planning to run it together." I sat down on my kitchen floor. Not the bakery as a gift, not a check, not a party. The bakery, the business I had kept breeding for 4 years, the one that had $187,000 of my dollars and thousands of hours of my time inside it, was being handed to my brother and his fiancée as a wedding present, and my parents had not mentioned it to me, not once. I drove to my parents' house the next morning. I did not call ahead. I sat at the kitchen table where I had eaten 10,000 meals, and I asked my mother, "Is this true?" She looked uncomfortable. She said they thought I understood. She said I had my career. I was doing well. I didn't need the bakery the way my brother did. She said he was starting a family and needed stability. She said the bakery should stay in the family, meaning my brother's family, apparently, the one he was building, not the daughter who had been holding it together with her bare hands. I asked about the money. I said, "Mom, I put almost $200,000 into this business. I have records of every transaction. Do you understand what that means?" She waved her hand. She said I had given that freely. She said I did it because I wanted to help, not because I expected anything back. She said bringing up money was making things ugly. My father didn't say much. He looked at the table. He looked tired. I had spent 4 years trying to protect him from stress, and here I was, apparently, the new source of it. I left without resolution. I sat in my car in their driveway for 20 minutes and then I drove home. Derek was waiting. I told him everything. He went very quiet in that way he does when he is genuinely angry but choosing his words carefully. Then he said, "Diane, you know this isn't okay, right? You know this isn't a situation where you apologize and move on." I knew. I just didn't know what to do with knowing. I did not do what I wanted to do, which was to go silent and absorb it, which is what I had done my whole life. Instead, and this felt enormous, this felt like learning to use a muscle I'd never exercised. I called an attorney. Her name was Patricia. She was a business attorney in Columbus, mid-50s, reading glasses on a beaded chain, absolutely no interest in wasting time. I brought my notebook. I brought my spreadsheet. I brought 3 years of bank transfer records, my own financial statements, emails where I had explicitly discussed covering specific business expenses, the lease renegotiation documents with my name on the correspondence. Patricia looked at everything. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "This is not nothing. You have a documented history of financial contribution to a business you were never given ownership stake in. There are legal avenues here." She explained the concept of unjust enrichment. She explained that depending on how the transfer was structured, there might be grounds for a claim against the business itself. She told me the process would not be fast and it would not be cheap and it would be uncomfortable. She also told me that people with documentation like mine were in a very different position than people without it. I retained her that week. I did not tell my family immediately. I needed time to be sure I was doing the right thing for the right reasons. Not out of spite, but out of fairness. Because there is a difference, and I needed to know which one was driving me. What finally made it clear was a phone call from my mother in late April. She called to ask if I could cover the bakery's quarterly tax payment. "Just this one more time," she said, because the transition was still being sorted out and my brother didn't have the cash flow yet. She said it as if the previous 4 years hadn't happened. She said it as if I was still just a helpful daughter with a little extra money. not someone who had just retained legal counsel over what they'd done with my previous contributions. I said no. She was silent for a moment. Then she said that this was very selfish of me. That family doesn't keep score. That I was going to damage my relationship with my brother right before his wedding. That if I kept this attitude up, I was going to find myself very alone. I said, "Mom, I love you, but I'm not going to keep funding a business that now belongs to someone else. I'm going to need you to hear that." She hung up. The wedding was in June. I went. Derek came with me. I sat at a table with cousins I barely knew and smiled and ate the salmon and watched my brother and Felicity dance and thought about nothing in particular. My mother did not speak to me directly the entire evening. My father hugged me at the door when we left and held on for a second longer than usual and didn't say anything, which said everything. The legal process moved slowly, the way legal processes do. Patricia sent a formal demand letter in July, outlining my documented contributions and requesting either compensation or a structured equity acknowledgement. My brother called me 40 minutes after it arrived. Furious in that way he gets where his voice goes very flat and controlled. He said I was trying to destroy his marriage before it started. He said I was jealous. He said my records were not how it actually happened, and he'd love to see me try to prove otherwise in court. I said, okay. He seemed surprised I didn't argue. There wasn't anything to argue about. I had the records. He had his feelings about the records. Those were different things. My parents called a family meeting in August. This was at the house, around that same kitchen table. My brother and Felicity sat on one side, Derek and I on the other. My parents at the ends. My mother talked for a long time about unity and family, and how this situation was hurting everyone, and how surely we could find a way to resolve this without lawyers. I said I was open to resolution. I said here is what resolution looks like to me. I am not asking for the bakery. I am not asking for an apology. I am asking for fair compensation for documented financial contributions to a business I have no ownership in. I slid a one-page summary across the table. Patricia had helped me draft it, clean and clear, no emotion, just numbers. My father picked it up. He read it. I watched his face. He put it down. He looked at my mother. Something passed between them that I couldn't read. My brother started talking about how I was exaggerating, about how some of those contributions were just regular family help, about how you can't put a price on family support. Felicity put her hand on his arm, which I noticed. Derek, who had barely spoken, said quietly, "With respect, she has bank records for every item on that list. Do you have records saying otherwise?" My brother didn't answer that. The meeting ended without resolution. But something had shifted. I could feel it. Patricia called me 2 weeks later to tell me my parents' attorney had reached out. They wanted to discuss a settlement. There was a number on the table. Not everything I had put in, but significant, enough to matter. Enough to be real. I took 2 days to think about it. I talked to Derek. I went for long walks by myself. I thought about my father's face at that kitchen table, reading that one-page summary. I thought about what I actually wanted. Not the money specifically, but what the money represented. The recognition that it had been real. That I had been real. That my contribution hadn't been invisible just because I hadn't fought for it at the time. The settlement was enough for that. I signed in September. My parents and I have not fully repaired things. I want to be honest about that because I don't think these stories always end with a clean reunion scene and everyone learning a lesson and hugging at Thanksgiving. We talk. My mother and I had coffee last month. It was careful, a little stiff, but it was real. My father texted me on my birthday, a long text for him, 4 sentences. I saved it. My brother and I are not close. I don't know if we will be. Felicity sent me a message a few months after the settlement, just 3 lines, saying she respected what I did and she was sorry it had come to that. That meant something to me, unexpectedly. The bakery is still there, in the strip mall between the nail salon and the UPS store. I drove past it last week on my way to a client meeting. The Instagram account I built is still active. They're still doing the corporate pastry delivery contract I set up. I don't feel bitter about that. I feel something more complicated and more honest. Like watching something you built from a distance, knowing you would not have survived without you, and knowing also that you survived without it. Diane proposed in October. At home, no grand gesture. Just the two of us in the apartment I am very proud of, with takeout getting cold on the counter. I said yes before he finished the sentence. My leather-bound notebook is still on the kitchen counter. I keep it there not as a reminder to be guarded or to keep score. I keep it there because I want to remember that I am someone who pays attention, someone who tracks things, someone who finally understood that knowing your own value and quietly absorbing its erasure are two very different choices, and that it is never too late to start making the second one. I don't regret the years I spent helping. I regret the years I spent helping while pretending it wasn't happening. That's the part I'm done with. I still drive past Sunrise Suites sometimes. Not on purpose. It's just on the way to things, and every time I do, I feel something I've had to sit with for a while before I could name it. Not bitterness, not pride exactly. Something quieter. Like looking at a scar and remembering that it healed. What happened to me, what I let happen for a long time, didn't come from nowhere. I was raised to believe that being good meant being available, that love looked like sacrifice and sacrifice didn't ask for anything back. Those weren't bad values in themselves. The problem was, I applied them without discernment, to people who had learned they didn't need to reciprocate because I would never make them. Every time I covered a payroll gap without a conversation, every time I renegotiated a lease at 6 in the morning and called it helping, I was teaching everyone around me that my contributions had no weight, that I could be counted on indefinitely without acknowledgement, without terms. That is a lesson I taught them, and I had to be honest enough with myself to see it. What changed things wasn't the attorney or the settlement, or even Derek's quiet, steady presence through all of it, though all of those mattered. What changed things was a decision I made to stop treating my own records as something embarrassing. I had kept that spreadsheet because I'm an accountant and I track things, but somewhere along the way I started to feel ashamed of it, like wanting documentation made me calculating or cold. The moment I walked into Patricia's office and laid that notebook on her desk without apologizing for it, something shifted in me. I started to understand that knowing what you've given and what it's worth isn't the opposite of generosity. It's the foundation of it. You cannot give freely if you don't first know clearly. There's something I've come to believe about the way consequences actually work in a life, not as punishment, but as information. My parents are not bad people. They made choices, repeatedly, that treated one child as a resource and another as a priority. Those choices had a cost, not because the universe was keeping score, but because actions accumulate. Patterns compound. The daughter who kept absorbing the cost eventually stopped absorbing it, and that meant the cost became visible for the first time. That's not revenge, that's just reality catching up. I think about Felicity's 3-line message sometimes. The one where she said she respected what I did. I don't know what her marriage looks like from the inside, or whether my brother has changed, or whether Sunrise Suites will still be there in 10 years. I don't need to know. What I needed was to stop making myself smaller to keep other people comfortable and to find out slowly, imperfectly, that I was capable of standing in my own space without apologizing for it. Diane proposed in October. I said yes before he finished the sentence. That notebook is still on my counter. I keep it there not as a ledger of grievances, but as a reminder of what I'm capable of. The discipline to track, the clarity to act, and the willingness to finally, after 31 years, stop confusing endurance with strength. Those are not the same thing. I know that now.